Okay, we kind of got cut off there at the end of that last video. So those are the 6 steps for us to be able to complete our check. And then again, as I stated beforehand, this part is going to get ripped off and given to the Eastside Supplies. So it's very important that we had completed that check stub beforehand so that we had our objective evidence in place. Now, as we are going through and filling out our checks, if we were doing this in real life, excuse me, we would obviously be filling our checks out in pen, because if you had it in pencil, anybody could erase your $10 check and make it a $100,000 check. So we always fill those out in pen. However, that means that with pen, you could potentially make a mistake, and banks usually refuse to accept any sort of altered check. Some banks may make you write a new one. Some may just have you initial by the altered part of the check. It just depends on your bank. Typically, what happens is if you make any kind of error when you're preparing checks, a new one should be prepared instead. And because checks are pre-numbered, remember, all checks not used should still be retained for our records, because if we filled out a check number 112 and then the next check we see is 114, we're going to wonder what happened to 113. And so that's where we have what's called a voided check. An avoided check is simply a check that cannot be processed because the person who wrote the check made it invalid in some way. Typically, you either made an error on the check. Sometimes maybe you wrote a duplicate check and someone else had already paid that bill. If you have more than one person that writes checks, whatever the reason is, what we do is we write void in very large letters on both the check and the check stub, and that serves to us to show that that is not a valid check anymore. But it is important for us to record a voided check, and so we record it in our journal. What happens is we put our date in for the date of the check, and we write void in the account title. That just signifies to us that we have a voided check. And then in the document number, we write our check number, which is C, stands for check, and then 24. And then since it's not going to be posted, we put a check mark in our post reference column. And then we just draw a line through the cash credit column to indicate that that check didn't actually have an amount. It just was voided. So that's how we would record a voided check in our journal. So we're going to head on over to our 5-1 work together in MindTap, and we're going to practice some endorsements as well as recording some deposits and filling out some checks.